The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport? Izubee Charles, joined by Stephen Wagner. Thank you for starting your morning with us on Good Morning CaneSport. It is Thursday, September 19th, and we have a ton of news on the site this morning. But first off, if you missed yesterday's Lamar Thomas show, make sure to go back on the site and check that out. A lot of good stuff with Lamar. Always a pleasure talking and catching up with him ahead of this big game against USF up in Tampa. Also, be sure to check out what Cam Ward and the other players said after practice yesterday as the team gears up to make that road trip up north to face off against the Bulls. This morning, we also take a closer look at that USF team that is coming off a big win versus Southern Miss and what kind of challenges they may present to the Hurricanes on both sides of the ball. Steven, we're looking forward to this game 4 for the Hurricanes. You've watched the Bulls a little bit. What have you seen from them? I know they had that really, really good game against Bama where they kind of lost things at the end of the game, but still showed a good fight for 3 quarters. What are your thoughts on this USF team and the challenges they may present Miami?
So a few different things can be true. USF can be very well coached, and they can do a very, very good job of playing up to the competition that they're facing. And they're doing they've done an especially good job these past 2 years, kind of turning the program around, getting to a bowl game last year. The transfer portal basically took all of their top production the previous year. I think they're very well coached. I think they do a great job playing up to the competition that they're playing against. But against Alabama, I think we can also say Alabama did not play particularly well. They were without their starting left tackle basically until the fourth quarter. Alabama kind of played with their food a little bit, not dissimilar to kind of what we've seen Alabama do in recent years. I mean, heck, if we're being honest, their game against Alabama really reminded me a lot of that game that Alabama played against USF in Tampa last year. Whenever I think it was like 3-3 at halftime, USF gave them a major scare, and Alabama needed a touchdown late in order to be able to pull away. It really reminded me a lot of that. And I know last year, whenever we saw the Alabama USF game, we all thought, man, this is unbelievable. Alabama must be having some major problems. Not a lot of people were thinking the other way around, that maybe USF is just a very good team. I kind of feel the same way after watching their game against Alabama this year. I thought, man, Alabama has some problems, but now I'm also thinking USF's a pretty good team. They've got good ball players. And if you allow USF to hang around, if you do not step on their throats early, they can get you into a long, drawn-out battle. Kind of think of this in boxer terms. If Miami's able to go in there and they're able to give them the kill shot, they score on their first 2 drives to start the game. They take a 21-0 lead in the second quarter. They get a turnover, and they're just able to ram the ball down their throats. I think Miami can definitely take control of this game early. If they don't, and they allow USF to kind of hang in the fight, USF is one of those teams that gets more and more and more confident the longer that you allow them to hang around. Now, Alabama just had too much talent and ultimately pulled away from USF late. That talent disparity definitely did show up in that game. Alabama ended up being Alabama, and USF ended up being USF. But man, USF was looking really confident going into that fourth quarter. They had some mojo going. It was one of these things where you get one stop, and all of a sudden your sideline is thinking, man, all of a sudden we have a real chance to win this game. So I think if Miami goes out there and they're able to really put it on them, and let's say it's 21-3 at some point in the second quarter, I think Miami definitely wins this game. If this ends up being a long, drawn-out dogfight, we've seen kind of kooky things can happen whenever Miami gets in a dogfight with a team that they're supposed to kick the crap out of. Weird stuff just has a way of happening. And so the best way to avoid that, if you're Miami, you have to go out there and you have to stomp on their throats early. You have to put the pedal to the freaking metal. If I'm a Miami fan, I want Miami scoring on their first 2 drives. I want them looking like they are in complete control of this game, and I want them taking the crowd out early. I mean, USF is probably going to have fans in the upper deck. I mean, I hate the idea of Power 5 teams having to go play Group of 5 schools on the road, and that's a topic for that's a topic for a different conversation. But why the heck Miami would benefit from going to USF, I have absolutely zero idea. But these opportunities for Group of 5 programs, they don't come around every single year. And that fan base is going to be fired up. They're talking shit on Twitter. The Barstool USF account is absolutely hilarious. They're saying their piece. They want the smoke. They've made it very, very clear they want this game. And quite honestly, USF doesn't have nearly as much to lose as Miami does. If USF wins this game, keep in mind, a lot of people are probably going to be saying, man, USF was close with Bama in Tuscaloosa in the fourth quarter, and then they beat Miami the following week. All of a sudden, USF might actually be in playoff consideration. They might seriously be one of those teams that, the committee is talking about whenever they're saying, okay, who's the best Group of 5 team? I think USF absolutely could be in that conversation if they win this game. USF has absolutely everything to play for and nothing to lose. And if you're Miami, you need to go out there and you need to stomp them early.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the biggest things, kind of getting on those guys early. And I want to kind of touch on 2 things that you talked about. You said kind of USF plays up to their competition. And in the Alabama game, they were missing their starting left tackle. First off, with USF playing up to their competition, I think that's true. But one thing I noticed after watching their few games, kind of looking back on their film, they also can play down to their competition. Last week when they played Southern Miss in Mississippi, they were at one point down 14-0 in the first quarter. So those guys came out really, really flat. Southern Miss got on them quickly, scored a lot of points, and then they kind of faded in that second half. And then in the Alabama game, it was the opposite. They come out hot those first 3 quarters, and that fourth quarter comes, and they're just gone. Alabama runs to score up, and I think scores 3 or 4 touchdowns in 6 minutes. So one thing that I've noticed about USF is they're kind of inconsistent. Sometimes they're coming out good, sometimes they're coming out bad. I feel like if Miami comes out firing on all cylinders, keeps that throttle on them the whole game, that game shouldn't be even close. I was kind of on the side saying, hey, I think this USF team could give Miami a real challenge. But I think if Miami comes out and just plays Miami football how they've been playing these first 3 games, I don't even think this game's going to be a contest. And kind of going back with the Alabama game, I was watching those highlights and clips. That right tackle probably had at least 5 to 10 plays where I'm just like, you're giving this game away. I think that he's shaving points or something. He looked absolutely atrocious. Not saying, USF doesn't have a good team and all that good stuff, but that right tackle Alabama was handing out them favors. So I think that's going to be one thing that's really, really important. They do have a good edge rusher, number 4, Vaughn, coming off that side of the ball, that right tackle side, where Francis Mauigoa will be. That will be an intriguing matchup. I'm going to be excited to watch. But I do think, like I said, if Miami comes out firing on all cylinders, this should be a game that they handle easily, go up to Tampa, get another big win, and just keep that ball rolling. Really excited to see Cam Ward against that secondary. We know Jalen Monroe's an explosive guy, but I feel like Cam Ward's just a much, much better passer than Jalen Monroe. I think that'll be to his benefit in that matchup as well. The offensive side of the ball, Byron Brown is a great quarterback, but I do think if you stop him from running and force him to throw the ball, that offense is going to look completely different. Do have 2 good running backs that I think they can give Miami some challenges, some speedy guys, but nothing they can't handle. I think the linebacker play is going to be crucial in this matchup. Spine, Byron, slowing down that run game and things like that. But, a lot of stuff. We have a lot of coverage on the site talking about the matchup as well. Steven, before we move on from the USF Miami, talk, what's your score prediction? What do you think is going to be, that end result at Saturday night?
Yeah, I'm going to go Miami 35-10. I do think, like I said earlier, I do think Miami's going to do what they need to do. I do think that they're going to come out. They're going to throw some shots early. They're going to throw some punches early. And I do think that they're going to be in command of this game by halftime. Because we've seen whenever Mario Cristobal has just handed the game plan to Shannon Dawson and said, man, go get him. Call your best plays. Shannon Dawson really is a pretty good coordinator. He's not, one of the most transcendent minds in all of college football, but he is a very good and very capable coordinator, I believe, whenever he's allowed to really unhitch the trailer. And I do think that, this is a different Miami team. I think this is a team with Cam Ward as opposed to, last year saying, well, we just need a quarterback who won't lose the game. This is much more of a team where you can hand the ball to Cam Ward and say, go win us the game, man. Go make plays. Because so far, Cam Ward has proven he can do exactly that. He can run when he needs to run. He can keep plays alive. Now, sometimes he definitely does play with fire. But I mean, man, right now he's getting away with it. Now whether or not that's going to hold up through 9 games of ACC play. I mean, we'll kind of cross that bridge when we get there. Or 8 games of ACC play. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, and that he'll be going up against fellow Power 5 talent that can at least step on the same field as Miami. But right now, Cam Ward is going to have a serious talent advantage. And I think that he, of all people, is going to know how to exploit that. I mean, I think that what we've seen through the first 3 games of the year is Cam Ward is really enjoying the luxuries that he has at Miami, just in terms of the talent that he's surrounded by. This is hands down the best roster he's ever been surrounded by. This is the biggest talent. This is the biggest talent differential that he's had over opponents that he's played on the field, even going back to whenever he was at UIW at the FCS level. He's really enjoying having an offensive line where he can sit all day in the pocket if he needs to. He can take 8 seconds to drop back if he really needs to. He doesn't have to go for a home run play every time. I really think that with a quarterback like that, Miami's going to be able to kind of hand him the keys a little bit in this game and say, man, we trust you. We believe in you. We don't want a quarterback who's just going to not lose us the game. We want a quarterback that's going to go out there, and we want a quarterback that's going to win this game before it really gets started.
Yeah, I think Miami comes out on top. My score prediction, I think it's going to be like a 45-13 type of game. I do think USF gets on the board, but I just think Miami's defense is going to play up to a level. They've shown in the past 2 years on Atlanta they can stop the run. I think they'll do that, and they'll force Byron Brown to throw the ball. And, I don't think he is a very, very good passer. I think he's a good quarterback, but, he's not an elite passer that's going to dice up a defense. And I think that offense is going to have, their way on that USF defense. So stay tuned for that. Like I said, we have a ton of coverage on the site talking about that matchup, have the players talking about it as well. And we're excited to see what goes down on Saturday. Going to switch it to recruiting. I know Steve and I have, had our teeth sunken in recruiting these past few weeks, whether it's South Florida guys or Miami targets across the country. Steven did a great job of breaking down the top 10 targets remaining in the 2025 class for the Hurricanes. Steven, without giving too much away, because obviously we want, all the subscribers to read the article and kind of get their insights and things like that. Who are 3 guys that you really, really focus on in this recruiting class, in the 2025 class, as we inch closer to December 4th signing day?
Yeah, now keep in mind the story that I wrote that's going to be linked on the site. This is not an exact look at Miami's recruiting board, but this is kind of our approximation of, who we feel the 10 most wanted guys are based on how talented they are, how much of priority they've been so far for Miami this year, how badly Miami needs help at that position and stuff like that. But I mean, man, one of the guys who I'm including on the list that I'm really, really high on is going to be Elijah Griffin, 5-star defensive tackle out of Georgia, elite level defensive tackle that, Miami understands is going to have to throw the kitchen sink at. Hurricanes have been working on him really, really hard. He's been considered a Georgia lean for quite a while. But I think if anyone can pull him out of Georgia, it's probably going to be Miami. We expected him to get down for the Ball State game. He ended up actually never making the trip. But that's a guy who we're definitely keeping, a very, very close eye on. I'm also going to include a guy who recently decommitted from Florida State on the list. You'll want to check him out too. Kellen Wiley, the newly minted 4-star linebacker out of Tampa Armwood. He's teammates with Tyler Williams and Gerard Pringle, Miami's running back commit. This is a guy who kind of came out of nowhere from Miami. Miami offered him very, very early in the year. Hurricanes, they really started taking a look at him, coincidentally, just around the time that Elijah Melendez started picking up, or that there started being buzz around Elijah Melendez and Auburn. So, a heck of a happy coincidence there that, just as there were rumors between Elijah Melendez and Auburn that, a guy like Kellen Wiley just happens to appear on Miami's board. But that's a guy who we know Miami's very high on, and a guy who has an official visit in the works with Miami. They're trying to set that up right now. And then for the last one, I'm going to go with Dallas Wilson. We've known Miami's been after Dallas for a while. The 5-star receiver, also out of Tampa, but he's been committed to Oregon for more than a year. And so kind of the big question there is Miami's recruiting pitch of, hey, you can accomplish all of this stuff in Florida and you can do it close to home, as opposed to going all the way to Oregon. Is that going to beat out his affinity for Dan Lanning? Because he is really, really high on Dan Lanning. He likes Dan a lot. That's been one of the big reasons why he's, remained so committed to Miami to Oregon, is because of that connection that he has with Dan Lanning. So we'll see what happens there, but those are a couple of guys who I think we're going to keep a close eye on.
Yeah, make sure to check out that story with those top 10, biggest wants and targets remaining in this 2025 class. I think there's a lot of meat still left on the bone in this class. I know it's later in the cycle, but things can change quickly when programs start winning or programs start losing. Recruits start peeping their heads elsewhere, and Miami staff starts creeping in other classes and trying to do their best to Grinch impression, flipping recruits. So a ton of juice in that article, but kind of staying on that same topic. That Tampa area in that 2025 class, man, is there a lot of talent there. Like you mentioned, Gerard Pringle, Armwood, running back that we've been very, very impressed with this season. His two teammates, Tyler Williams, who I think is criminally underrated. I know On3 has him in the 100 somewhere, but a lot of other recruiting sites don't even have him ranked as 4-star. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the Sunshine State after getting eyes on him. And then Kellen Wiley, man, what a rise he's had. We had the chance to watch him play against Miami Norland, and the young man was literally knocking helmets off. Say, hey, who is this guy? And then I think he's the number 112 prospect in the 2025 class, according to On3. So a ton of talent in that Tampa area. And Miami's really tapped in. So I wonder if Miami can, end up flipping Williams, a guy like Dallas Wilson as well, and then add Kellen Wiley to that class. So a ton of guys still left on the board for Miami. I think they're going to do a great job in that 2025 class and end the year on a high note. Another guy that's a new addition to the 2025 class, American Heritage wide receiver Malachi Toney, reclassed from the 2026 to the 2025 class. Steven, this is kind of a bit of a surprise, but nonetheless a great addition to that unit for the Canes. So only have one wide receiver committed, Dalen Upshaw, in that 25 class. What are your thoughts on Malachi reclassing, joining the 25 class, and just him as a prospect overall?
Man, I've been saying it for a while. I think his player comp is Xavier Restrepo. This time last year, he wasn't quite as built. He wasn't quite as stocky. I said maybe he's a little bit more of like a Ray Joseph type of dude. Now I think he's Restrepo. Stocky build, pretty fast, runs very good routes, good possession receiver, incredibly reliable, incredibly consistent. One of those guys that, his quarterback is able to kind of locate on every single play. He sort of is, kind of like a safety blanket type of guy. And I think that, he could have a career path that kind of follows Restrepo. You look at what Restrepo did. I think he redshirted his freshman year, got to play a little bit. His second year on campus, really emerged his third year. And then last year, obviously, he had a complete breakout where he really emerged as an elite slot player. And of course, he's been very, very good for Miami so far this year. I think Malachi Toney could be on kind of a similar path, especially considering that he's reclassifying. And in all honesty, it's probably going to take him at least a year in order for the game to really slow down for him once he gets to the college level. I mean, it is really, really difficult to reclassify because, as we all know, there's a really big difference, both in maturity and how you mentally process things between a kid who's 18 years old and a kid who's 17 years old. And next year, he's going to be a 17-year-old freshman. I do think that he'll benefit from redshirting if Miami does, in fact, end up deciding to redshirt him. But I do think that he has a really, really good ceiling, and I think he could end up being a really productive and a really reliable receiver for Miami.
Yeah, I really do like that Xavier Restrepo comp. I think Malachi is the quarterback's best friend. Sure-handed guy, finds open space, and then when you get on the ball, he makes big plays afterwards. We've seen him over the last 3 years just make play after play after play. His freshman year, he played on a very talented American Heritage squads that feature guys like Mark Fletcher, Brandon Innes. And he was that number 2 receiver as a true freshman or ninth grader on the team that was very, very talented, lost to Miami Central in the state championship. And I'll never forget his first high school game was on ESPN. This is Los Alamitos, one of the best, high schools out of California. And then I think second or third quarter, he checks himself to a fade, scores a touchdown, gets an interview on ESPN, and you just see the calmness and, his mentality as a true freshman. Like, this kid's going to be special. And I've said it, I think he's the best wide receiver in South Florida, regardless of class right now. Just the type of talent he is on and off the field, his mentality, things like that. And his head coach at American Heritage said he's had the best hands to ever come through that program. And that program sent, a ton of guys in the NFL. I think they have 12 guys in the league right now, so that's saying a lot. So really excited to see Malachi Tony the remainder of the year and get to Miami early. And I think he'll have a lot of success in that program, under Coach Cristobal and those guys with Kevin Beard in the mix as well. Sticking with the 2025 commits, make sure to check out, if you haven't yesterday, we published our weekly tracking the Miami commits. Another huge weekend for Hurricanes wide receiver Dylan Upshaw, who had 4 touchdown receptions in Alabama for Central. Up to 10 touchdowns this year, having a great year, but Auburn is still pushing in that recruitment. He was back in the Plains last weekend, so going to be definitely a program to watch. He's planning on taking an official visit with the Tigers. Hopefully Miami doesn't lose a second commit to Hugh Freeze and those guys. Steven, just what are your quick thoughts on Upshaw and Auburn's push for the Alabama native?
Yeah, Auburn's been on his list for a while. In-state, an in-state program that's been prioritizing him, an in-state program that was showing very, very clear interest early in his recruitment. Miami obviously landed his commitment over the summer. Now Dalen definitely is a good player, but in the event that he were to end up at Auburn, I don't know if I would say that that's necessarily the worst, most horrible thing in the world, considering Miami is hoping to continue adding receivers in this class. We know that Miami does want to add weapons for quarterbacks in next year's, or for quarterbacks moving forward. That's been a major point of emphasis. But kind of the way I see it, receivers are not a decommit that you necessarily have to flip out over anymore. Especially considering the amount of options that are available in the transfer portal every single year. Now, keep in mind, in no way am I saying that Dalen Upshaw is decommitting, and Miami obviously still likes him quite a bit. And I do think right now that he will be a Hurricane, but I am also saying that, it can also be true that you can find a lot of good experienced receivers in the portal. I mean, look at what Miami did this past year in terms of adding weapons, and what they did the year before that. You can find talent in the portal.
Yeah, Upshaw, a very talented receiver. Hopefully, by December, he sticks in that class, and he said he's still locked in with the Canes. But that push from the in-state program is going to be something that we watch for the next few months until that December 4th signing day. So stay tuned with that, and make sure to check out how the other 2025 Canes commits did last week. Moving forward with another Cane commit that unfortunately cannot play his senior year, Amari Wallace, who suffered a season-ending injury before the year started. Steven, you caught up with him. He's still in high hopes, and he's loving what he's seen from the program. What's he saying right now?
Yeah, his recovery is going pretty well right now. He is expected to probably miss all of his senior season. He'll probably continue his recovery next year once he actually arrives on Miami's campus. But he's still very solid with the Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes are still very solid with him. We don't expect his injury to affect his commitment status at all, or Miami's level of commitment to him. He still should be a Hurricane. Everything's going very well, and he is totally shut down right now. He's not talking about anyone but the Canes.
That's awesome to hear from Amari Wallace, a player that I think will be a darn good guy when he gets to that next level, and Colgate was in that system. So make sure to check out that update on him. And we have a few updates on newly offered 2026 prospects, so make sure to stay tuned with that, as well as any new news that may arise this morning. That's all that we have for Good Morning CaneSport. For Stephen Wagner, I'm Izubee Charles. Thank you all for watching. Have a great rest of your day.